Mazel tov on a beautiful film. Thank you so much for creating it and bringing it to the mainstream. It's just so important to be telling these stories.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Really does. We just screened the film last night to the West Coast premiere in San Francisco, and it was similarly a very moving and emotional experience for the audience and for me. We're still so early in releasing the film that if as the filmmaker, I'm very much still sharing the film is a part of the story of the film.
Yeah. Is this the first film to actually document the hostage crisis and bring it mainstream? I feel like it is.
That's a great question. It's certainly not the first film to tell the story of October 7th. It's certainly not the first film to tell the story of what's happened since that day. Um, I think it might be it's I'm not going to say the only, but one of the few films that tells the story of one family's experience from a very early point in the process of making this film, which obviously we had no idea we were going to make. This was, not a film we wanted to make or planned to make, and just felt a deep responsibility to create it. But from a very early point, we decided that the frame of the film really has to be our relatives, this one family. It's not a film that encompasses the all of the atrocities of October 7th or all of the atrocities of what's been happening in Gaza and the West Bank. It's really a story about the Bain and Atzili family's experience, and that was a very nuanced and complex and then intimate experience to bear witness to.
And you just mentioned now that they are your relatives. How did it all unfold for you, finding out what had happened on October 7, what happened to Netta as well, because he was impacted as well, and then finding out that Liat and Aviv had been taken?
Yeah. Um, it was a day or two after October 7th that through mutual family, we found out that Liat and Aviv were missing. And we immediately messaged Yehuda and Chaya, Liat's parents. Yehuda and Chaya are our Israeli family that when Lance and I visited Israel, we stayed with them on their kibbutz in the north and know them well. And we got on a call with them a few days later, and Yehuda expressed to Lance and I that he was planning to come to Washington, D.C. in the coming days with his grandson Netta and his daughter Tal to advocate for Liat Naviv's release to the U.S. government. And Lance and I are filmmakers that live in Washington, D.C. And we felt this responsibility to pick up our camera, and our family had been thrown into the epicenter of one of the largest geopolitical crises of our time, and a crisis that was was and still is deeply misunderstood, deeply polarized. And we had an opportunity to try to really document the nuanced experience of what one family goes through. And what we were witnessing did not fit into any of the boxes that were being put out there in mainstream media or in social media. Every member of the Bain and Atzili family was processing this tragedy in their own way. And unlike other families and communities that are divided around this conflict, they had no choice but to confront these differences with one another because their loved ones' lives were at stake. And my brother Lance and I felt that seeing that and bearing witness to that would be a really important narrative for the public to see and engage with to make sense of this horrific tragedy and this horrific moment in time.
And you've just touched on it, that there is a lot of political conflict in the film within the family as well. Um, Yet the film manages not to take sides. I think it was the Hollywood Reporter that called the film a thoughtful middle ground. Was that a conscious choice to show the differing opinions, but for the film to document rather than comment?
Yeah, it was. One of my mentors, Gordon Quinn, he's the founder of Cartemquin Films, and he taught me never look down the lens of your camera at anybody. And that's been a prevailing ethic and set of values that Lance and I have applied to all of our films. And so every member of this family has I sought to empathize and understand and lift up their very real way of processing this tragedy and their political views. um i I think we're I think there's enormous importance to seeing the gray area and seeing contradictions, complexities, seeing different perspectives in stories that deal with, you know, people's lived experience. And I think we're living in a moment where we're all too often fed narratives, whether it's social media or mainstream media, that sort of fit our political views. And within this family, every single person had a very different view. And so honestly, it was a real gift to have the opportunity to see different perspectives within a directly impacted family playing out in real time. And bear in mind, this is the worst days of their life. Um, their Liat and Aviv are missing, and they're being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning by calls from the IDF telling them that we don't know if they're alive or dead. And Yoni Brook, the director of photography, and myself are sleeping outside of their hotel room, documenting, through the night and morning and day, horrific experience that they're going through. So the family deserves enormous credit for the courage to not just go through this, but to open up such vulnerable moments, for audiences to be able to bear witness to.
Yeah, and I'm just going to ask you this now because you just mentioned it as well, that there is that scene where Chaya and Yehuda do get that call to say Liat's on the list, and you guys weren't with them because it was obviously in the very early hours of the morning when they got the call, and you do see you guys rushing into their room. How did it feel to be witnessing that moment, as well as the moments when they were told she's not on the list today, maybe tomorrow?
I mean, this was the hardest film I've ever made. I've never made a film with family, with people that I love. I've never made a film about, like, where I've been so up close to trauma unfolding in real time. So it was honestly like very painful to make this film because there were so many moments where I wanted to just put the camera down and just like hug them and be there as a family member. And sometimes I did that, but sometimes I, caught myself and was like, no, this is doing something even more important to show up for this family and for the greater good. Um, on that day, we had actually slept outside of their hotel room for 4 nights straight. And then Yoni and I were like, okay, we need to just get a few hours of sleep. We'll come back here in a few hours. And we literally went to our hotel room, which is right across the street. And I slept for an hour, and then my phone rang, and Yehuda was like, she's on the list. And Yoni and I ran across the street, um, and here we are with Liat's parents, who had just the night before had this really tense argument. Um, they hadn't slept, and they, everyone was on edge. And here they are getting the news that, within hours they were going to be taken by helicopter to a hospital and be reunited with their daughter. Is an incredible moment to film. And then very quickly, you know, you don't even have time to feel that moment, because the first thing then I had to think about was, okay, within hours we're going to be in the hospital, and Liat's going to walk through those doors, and all sorts of questions surface. Do I film that? Can I film it? How do I film that? How do I make sure the family is comfortable with us filming that? I can't ask Liat if she's comfortable with that moment being filmed because she's not here. And so there's all sorts of ethical questions that we had to navigate. Um, and the film you see is a process of working through that, always with the family. There's no, when you make a film like this, there's no consent that you get on day one that you just follow through. It's a daily process of talking, making these decisions collectively with the family. So you can film these intimate spaces, but never in a way that's exploitative, never in a way that's a surprise to them. For Liat, it was a surprise. That was there was no way to avoid that. And we, that was a very complex thing to for her to come into this moment, processing everything she was processing for being captive for 54 days, and also discovering that a documentary was being made about her family.
And she'd also just found out mere moments before about Aviv. So she documents that as well.
The 12 hours after she was returned, which was a very painful but joyful moment, she was notified that her husband Aviv was killed on October 7th. And so within 48 hours of her coming home, I had to have a conversation with her, asking her, would she like us to film the funeral? So she's learning that a film was being made about her family, and having a conversation with me about, you know, what this film that she just learned about means to her, and if and how she wants us to be filming, her first days returning to her home, and having to having to have a funeral for her now deceased husband.
the the film, the scenes in the hospital were done so beautifully. Like you could see that you weren't imposing on what was happening in the room with the family, but just trying to show the world how this scene was unfolding for them all. So that was I was in tears that moment. Obviously a mother hugging her children and her sister and her parents, but also just the way it was filmed was really touching. So thank you for filming it that way. Whether that was done on purpose to film it that way or not, I think it was really beautifully done.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Um, and because you've also just spoken about it a little bit in terms of the importance of the story being told, I did read that at first Yehuda thought that it would just be kind of a family film that he would be able to show Liat and Aviv on their hopeful return, because at that stage he obviously didn't know that Aviv had sadly been murdered. Um, when did it become bigger than that? Was it immediate? As soon as you started filming, you knew there was something bigger there?
It was, there's a scene early in the film where Yehuda, his daughter Tal, and Netta, his grandson, just had arrived in Washington, D.C. And Yehuda tells the two of them that they're about to go meet with Mitch McConnell and Hakeem Jeffries, and every congressperson and senator on both sides of the aisle. And Yehuda says to both of them, we obviously need to focus on getting Liat and Aviv home, and that's the priority. But we need to also use this as an opportunity to advocate for peace and reconciliation with Palestinians and the day after. And that these two goals, getting their loved ones home and a broader plan for peace, needed to be one and the same at this moment. And Netta was had just survived the attack 2 weeks ago. He's deeply traumatized. His friends had been killed or kidnapped, and was not in a space where he was wanting to talk about reconciliation. Tal is not a political person at all, and was really encouraging her dad not to get political at all and just focus on Liat and Aviv. And this is obviously a totally unscripted scene. We're just witnessing it. And in that moment, myself, my brother Lance, and Yoni, the director of photography, we all talked, and we all felt that what we were witnessing was 3 generations of an American Israeli family, uh, with caught in the middle of this crisis where the whole world was looking at the hostages and the hostage families, navigating 3 very different sets of views and experiences that they were each having. And we felt that that was a really important story to tell, and to try to tell it, as you put it, without our agenda, with the agenda being truth and authenticity. And that's when we realized that this was not, initially, we thought we were just going to film for a few days and put together a short that maybe just raised awareness around Liat and Aviv's situation, because we had no idea how long this was going to take to get closure. And it was that scene that we filmed where we realized we were documenting something far deeper and more universal, and that this was not going to be just a few days.
And the film as a whole, it feels very raw. As you said, there's a lot that's, I mean, it's all unscripted. It's very, you're witnessing it in the moment, fly on the wall, beautifully done. Was there a lot of editing that was done after the fact, or is it like pretty close to how everything unfolded?
Yes, the film is beautifully and brilliantly edited by Jeff Gilbert, who is one of my favorite editors of all time, and I was so grateful and lucky to have the opportunity to work with him. Um, we handed Jeff a hard drive. When you're making a film like this, you're filming hundreds of hours of footage. And Jeff has the near impossible task of watching every minute of that footage, which he did, and very much just trying to distill every character's experience with as much depth and care and complexity as he can possibly squeeze into a 97-minute film. And so the film, it took a year of editing, not because he's editing, trying to, manipulate or, try to make a point. He's really trying to, it's actually harder in my view to take hundreds of hours of footage and actually keep it to a very raw and intimate and honest and unfiltered experience, but told in 97 minutes where you can follow that through a compelling narrative. And that's what he did.
And beautifully, he did it beautifully. And as I said, it's raw, it's emotional. I'm very certain everyone who watch it will be left in tears because of the internal conflict they're all having, because of the familial conflict they're all having, and because of the pure emotion that you just see. Literally in every single scene that happens, there is such emotion, and you can obviously understand why. But yeah, it's incredible and so moving to watch it. So he really did a brilliant job with that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm here at a Jewish film festival in San Francisco, and I know you're part of a Jewish news outlet in Australia. And I think, you know, as we turn the corner to the high holidays coming up and just different gatherings that we all have with our families, with our communities, I'm hoping that the film can play a role in disarming some of people's emotions in this moment and allowing for a kind of healing and a kind of dialogue that I think is really needed right now. So I appreciate everything you shared, and I'm very excited for the film to be playing in the Melbourne International Film Festival. It's very, very meaningful.
Yeah. And I'm just conscious of time. So I just wanted to ask you, so um I've just got a couple more questions, but Aviv's body was just recovered last month. So it was, a long time after they found out that he had been murdered. Do you have any insight into, what was going on with the family when they found out it was his body coming home?
Um, well, it happened while I was with the whole family at Tribeca for the North American premiere of the film. So it was I can speak on from my experience, which was we were gathered together in New York, really sharing this film to four sold out audiences in New York City. And in the midst of sharing the film, we got the news that that Aviv's body had been recovered. Violence started to erupt between Israel and Iran, and it's just a reminder of this is not a story frozen in time that looks at the distant past that we're reflecting on. This is a story that we made very urgently. Typically, documentaries like this take 4 or 5 years. We made it in a little over a year because there are millions of lives at stake. Israelis, Palestinians, people all across the region, people all across the world that are in some way directly or indirectly connected to this conflict. And it it this is one film. It's not gonna solve peace in the Middle East, but I do believe stories like this, alongside other Israeli and Palestinian films that I hope are also made that deal with this conflict and broaden understanding, I hope can contribute toward peace and toward ending these cycles of violence.
Mm. Well, thank you very much, Brandon. I really appreciate your time. And as I said in the beginning, thank you very much for making this film. It's, as you say, it's an ongoing issue that we're all still dealing with, and appreciate you bringing Liat and Aviv and the whole family story to the forefront of people's minds, so that we can continue to advocate for the hostages and bring all of them home and hopefully see an end to the conflict.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your interest and support and belief in this film.